Let me check status screen. Everybody but one person has the audio. I guess we should go ahead and proceed then. Basically, our status screen looks good. Well, today we're going to talk about the CFSE Program, a Functional Safety Personnel Competency Program. My name is Bill Goebel. I have over 40 years experience. Most of it has been in the world of safety instrumented systems. I've been involved working for a manufacturer. For the last 14 years, I've been directly involved in functional safety and functional safety certification. I work for exida. exida is a global corporation with many worldwide locations. exida does a number of tasks, including we have a group that does consulting primarily at the systems level for owner-operator companies, helping them implement the safety lifecycle. We have a separate company that does engineering tools. We have exida certification, a separate company that provides product certification and the professional certification program that we're talking about today, the CFSE. Our product group does reference materials and training, and although these seem like quite diverse activities, I find that they're all related to functional safety, availability, and cybersecurity, the things we specialize in here at exida. I'm proud of our technical competency. Someone at exida has authored or co-authored most books ever written about functional safety. Most of these books are available on Amazon.com, and all the ones that are currently in print are most certainly available at exida.com. When we create new analysis methods, when we come up with new procedures, we write them into a book. We do not make them secret company procedures. Part of our work, as I talked about, is personnel safety certification. There are many reasons why people care about personnel safety certification. There are many new plants in developing countries where the potential workers do not understand functional safety, so the knowledge has to be developed. There are many existing process units that are running near maximum capacity and need to operate for longer periods of time. The workforce is changing. Many of the people with the knowledge and experience are retiring. There are new functional safety standards and new updates to functional safety standards that have made this whole situation more complex, it seems. And of course, there are several new challenges regarding cybersecurity and integrated systems. With all the changes and all the all the new people, it's no wonder there's such a strong motivation for having personnel functionally safety certified. One of the reasons is that it's been proven over and over again in many studies that people play a significant role in actual industrial accidents. You can see from a number of studies from the UK Health and Safety Executive, and in another failure from the chemical sector, a significant portion of the work is done in tasks that relate to people and their knowledge. Trevor Kletz, a well-known author from the United Kingdom, has done a number of books, like this one listed at the bottom, What Went Wrong? Case Histories of Process Plant Disasters. I've had the privilege of meeting Trevor Kletz and discussing some of these issues with him, and there seems to be a lot of things that could be helped if people had full competency. And one way to help achieve full competency is personnel functional safety certification programs. Our functional safety standards, both 61511 and the umbrella standard, the basic safety publication, 61508, have two fundamental concepts: the safety life cycle, which is a detailed engineering process, and probabilistic-based system design. The purpose behind the detailed engineering process, the safety life cycle, is very simple: avoid design mistakes. The concept behind the probabilistic analysis is to deal with random failures. And although random failures are very, very important, today's seminar focuses on the safety life cycle and the human side of things. Now, I told you that the safety life cycle, I'm just checking the status screen. Ah, good. Looks like everyone is working properly. Anyway, the safety life cycle is a detailed engineering process. Now, you're not supposed to read what's inside every box on this slide, but you are supposed to look at it as an overview and realize there can be a lot of steps and a lot of documents created. But the thing I'd like you to really focus on is there's one box that travels the entire length of the safety life cycle, and it's called Management of Functional Safety. Management of functional safety. What does that mean? Well, it means a number of things that are very important to achieve fewer design mistakes, fewer human errors. Functional safety management objectives include specifying the activities. What that just basically means, look, you have to specify the engineering steps. You don't have to use the chart that's already in the standard. You can make your own chart. But you figure out what steps you're going to take, what documents you're going to produce, how you're going to review, test, and document your work. Specify the responsibilities for each of the tasks. In other words, you can't expect someone to do a good job if you don't tell them they're responsible for it, number one, and number two, give them enough time. One essential part of functional safety management is you must determine the needed competency of those responsible for each task. And you must document that competency. That's a lot of work. Oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do that? Well, a functional safety management plan should specify the steps, roles and responsibilities, personnel competency requirements, the documentation structure, verification tasks, and many other items. But the key again that I'd like to point out to you is that personnel competency is a foundation requirement of functional safety management. Functional safety management is what is fundamentally needed in order to achieve safety. Now, when it comes down to looking at the details of personnel competency, the first thing one might ask is, what is required by the standards? Well, you must ensure that the staff involved in any, quote, activities are competent. That's almost like saying, okay, it's a very obvious statement, but there are very specific details in Annex A of 61508, and they talk about training, experience, and qualifications. They talk about system knowledge, safety engineering knowledge, legal and regulatory requirements, and of course, competency must be higher for uniquely designed systems or more critical high SIL level systems. Well, not bad, but we need a whole lot more information than that. So let's dig a little further. look for all the sections in the standard that talk about competency. And the general statement in 61508 is an obvious statement ensuring applicable parties involved in any of the overall or safety life cycle activities are competent. Okay, that makes sense. Here's the 61511 version. Persons, department, or organizations involved in safety life cycle activities shall be competent to carry out the activities for which they are accountable. Now, to me, that adds a little bit of information. And what it says to me is any particular person doesn't have to be an expert in everything. You only need expertise in the particular tasks for which you are responsible. Okay, that makes perfect sense. We still don't really have enough information to really set up a good competency program, but we have some guidance from the standard. So I'll give you an example of the program we have established here at exida. We first list all the safety life cycle tasks that our company will perform. Then, for each of those tasks, we define specific and detailed competency requirements. We define the judgment criteria, and then we document it in our quality procedures. So far, that sounds pretty obvious. We list the competencies on a per-task basis because we're dealing specifically with the statement competency is required for the tasks being performed. And again, it gets back to the concept that any person isn't required to be an expert in everything. And I'd just like to thank Chuck Miller of Emerson Process Management, Austin, Texas, for this button and this graphic. Chuck said one year at an Emerson exchange, SIS means safety is serious, competency required. I've always enjoyed that very much because I completely agree. Now here's an example of the detailed competency requirements that we've established at exida. The task is process HAZOP. We define two levels, basic and senior. You're allowed to do that. You could define more than two, but we felt two levels with different restrictions and allowed tasks was appropriate. You can see that for the basic requirements, we expect the person to hold a CFSP or CFSE certificate. They should have read the various sections of the standards. They should have read or attended all relevant exida training. And they should have read and understood at least one hazard identification report. Now that might not seem like very tough requirements to you, but remember this is the basic level. And at exida, this person can act as a scribe and can prepare draft hazard identification documentation. However, all of that work must be reviewed and approved by a senior person who has tougher requirements. And the senior person is allowed to do more tasks. So that's how we do it. Now you could argue about these specific standards, but I'll tell you the exercise of creating the competency requirements was very enlightening. And we definitely had debates and arguments. But this is a whole lot different than just keeping training records. Obviously, we keep training records in order to be evidence that we have fulfilled some of the requirements. But we've defined what training is required. We've defined what experience is required. In some cases, we effectively define what mentoring is required. Let me give you another example. For LOPA, or SIL selection workshops, we have a couple levels here. And notice again that we require a CFSP or CFSE for the basic and a CFSE for the senior. You might ask, well, why do you do that? When we were writing our requirements, quite frankly, I didn't want to spend any more money judging the competency than we had to. We could have set up more stringent requirements, but the CFSE program was created to help companies establish competency requirements. And they can save money by following a program, and in my opinion, the program is much better than one we would have set up internally. Because we have a lot of outside review, a lot of outside questions. We'll be talking all about how the questions and how the program was established in just a moment. And remember, safety is serious, competency is required. Now, there are many benefits that companies have. It helps provide proof of confidence. In many companies, getting competent people is absolutely a step in developing a strong safety culture, which results in a lot of cost savings, especially in the program itself. And of course, the big benefit is in reducing, for end users, for reducing the false trip rate and preventing loss. There are a lot of benefits for individuals as well. It kind of forces you to increase your functional safety skills. I've always thought that going to a university was just a way of paying somebody to force you to learn. You can learn on your own. Of course, two things happen. If I go to the university and take a course, first of all, I have deadlines. I'm forced to study in order to get an acceptable grade, and the grades are things that companies look at when they hire you. So when you think about it, a personnel competency program does the same job. It forces you to study. People become more valuable employees because of their knowledge, and perhaps for many people, the real advantage is opportunities for advancement. I can tell you that I get a lot of calls from headhunters. Now, I'm not looking for a new job, but I ask, oh, where'd you get my name? He says, oh, I got it from the CFSE list. Headhunters know and understand where the competent people are. I see clear advantages to individuals for getting a CFSE. It gives you exposure to the outside world that would be pretty hard to get otherwise. The CFSE program was established to achieve a number of goals back in 2000. It's operated per ISO 17024, which is an international standard for how to operate personnel certification program. Multiple levels of competency are defined. The CFSE is the first level, which is meant to show general competency in functional safety. The CFSE is meant to show much higher general knowledge. In other words, we're not specific to any particular task at this point. And there is a new endorsement program. So anyone who has a CFSP or a CFSE can elect to show advanced knowledge in specific areas. And this new program will be introduced next week, so you're getting a little preview. And a lot of people have asked for means to demonstrate even higher levels of competency than the CFSE. And many people have made the specific comment that, Yes, the CFSE is pretty tough, and indeed it is. But they want to show not general knowledge, but specific knowledge in HAZOP or SIL selection or SIL verification or SIF design or software documentation. And the endorsement program allows that. Now, I have a little question for you. I have two questions for you. How many people right now have a CFSP or CFSE or a TUV FSEng or an ISA X84 Expert certificate? If you could go in and vote, please, I'd like to see the results. I don't know if I set this up. 1, 2, no vote. Okay. 2 people with CFSE, 1 with CFSP, and 1 with the ISA 84 Expert Certificate. All right, thank you all very much. I'm going to ask another question in a bit. Nobody has an endorsement badge yet because that program starts next week. I know that for a fact. Now, what are these differences? The CFSP program requires 2 years of experience or education. There's a 1-part exam, which we'll talk about later in more detail. The program, if you successfully pass the application and the exam, you get a certificate which lasts every 3 years, and you must renew. The renewal process involves updating your contact information, updating your experience levels, and paying a fee. There is absolutely no required training course for any of the CFSP, CFSE programs. The reason for that is that there must be independence between training providers and evaluators. The people who create the exam questions are not allowed to be involved in training of people. The people who grade the exams are not allowed to be involved in training. Now, this is done to ensure impartiality, fairness. The CFSP program is operated by exida Certification, an accredited certification body, but the scheme, the actual procedures and requirements, are established by an outside independent nonprofit organization, the CFSE Governing Board. So there's multiple levels of independence here. The independent exida certification body operates the program. The CFSE board establishes program requirements. In the CFSE, you'll see it's tougher. 10 years of related experience. There's a 2-part exam. First part is multiple choice. Second part is essay questions. Again, it's a renewal every 3 years, just like CFSP. But to me, this 4th bullet item is still very important. There is no required training course. Oh, I see a question coming up. Does the ISA training count for CFSE? Well, the ISA training is excellent training to help you prepare for the CFSP exam, in my opinion. But since no training course is required, the ISA doesn't count. What really counts is whether you've learned the material or not. What really counts is whether you show that by passing the exam. Like CFSP, the program is operated by the exida certification body, and the program is requirements. The scheme is established by the CFSE Governing Board. Now, I really needed to comment The CFSE program is tough. I've seen the statistics for 2012. Under 60%, just under 60% passed the exam. So a lot of people were not fully prepared. It really is the most prestigious and globally recognized program in the world. And one of the reasons is it's really tough. That's one of the reasons, and that, of course, alone is a reason why I always recommend starting out with the CFSP program and getting that first. All right, let's talk about the new endorsement program. As I've said, there are many people are asking for additional ways to show specific areas of expertise, like LOPA, or safety requirement specifications, or safety software, or any of these topics, including cybersecurity. And so the CFSE Governing Board has agreed to establish the endorsement program. I kind of think of it like the old Scouting Merit Badge program. So you can get your merit badges in a whole bunch of different areas. And quite frankly, I used to love doing that. I think those colorful patches are pretty neat. Now, I will tell you that the CFSE endorsement program doesn't have any colorful patches. If anybody thinks we really should have them, be sure and let the board know. But right now, we do offer additional endorsement certificates to go along with your CFSE. The CFSE program does provide you with a certificate that's part of a certification program operated by an accredited certification body. And I want to talk about that a little bit because it does make a big difference in what you do. The whole program, CFSE, CFSP, and the endorsement program have different areas of expertise which depend on the, oh, here's another question coming in. It says, I have a CFSP. I got it 4 years ago. Can I take the CFSE? Well, you don't need to have a CFSP in order to take the CFSE, but I do recommend it. And in fact, the progression from CFSP to CFSE, as you've gained more knowledge and experience, is exactly what was intended by the whole program. So I heartily recommend you go for that CFSE. Demonstrate a higher level of competence. I believe it will pay off. I believe that your individual benefits will be there, especially in the economy that I see happening right now, in oil and gas economy that I see happening right now in the world. There are a number of different kinds of exams that operate on different standards. For example, the process industries exam depends on IEC 61511. So, by the way, I recommend you have a copy of 61511 with you. We'll be talking about that in a minute. There is a machine industry application based on IEC 62061. Another question. Any age limits? No. If you can pass the exam, that's what counts. If you have fill out the application, if you have the experience, if you have the references, if you have the knowledge so that you can pass the exam, no age limits whatsoever. Thanks for asking. First time I've been asked that. For those of you who are involved in product development, there is a developer software exam and a developer hardware exam. These are based on IEC 61508. But I don't really recommend you bring 61508 with you to the exam. It's such a thick, complicated, and almost unreadable standard that I don't think it would help you at all. If anything, you get tangled up and use up too much time looking for answers. You need a more condensed version of the standard like I do recommend the Exida Functional Safety book. And for the endorsement program, the standard is based upon the specific specialty area that you choose. Many of them are from 61511, some are from 62061, and some of them are from 61508. Each particular program identifies the relevant standards. The exams are very different. Quite frankly, CFSP is easier. There's a 5-hour session where you must answer 50 questions. I can't remember the exact ratio, but I think 40 are multiple choice and 10 are short answers. For all the multiple choice, select one best answer, and I recommend you answer every question, even if you're out of time, because there's no penalty for bad answers. And like all the programs, you must score 80% to pass. By the way, I saw these statistics for the year 2012, and almost 70% of those who took the CFSP exam passed. Some of them took preparation courses, some of them didn't. Of course, I'll just tell you again, it's not required. I think the pass rate is, but it might be nice if more people passed, but that's not the point. The point is judging competency. A pass rate doesn't really count so much. The CFSE exam has 2 sessions. The morning session is multiple choice. It's a 2-hour session, and open published material is absolutely allowed. The exam is open book. And another question came in. Are there limits on published material? And the answer is, well, only one, no personal notes. But you're absolutely allowed to bring copies of the standards. You're allowed to bring copies of textbooks. You're allowed to bring copies of course notes, even if some of your personal handwriting is in those books and those course notes. It's open book, just like a normal professional environment, and just like most of the professional engineering exams in the United States. There are 50 multiple choice questions. Select one best solution, answer every question, and you must score at least 30 on the multiple choice. The second part of the CFSE exam is the case study short answer afternoon session. Now that is a 4-hour session, and again it's open book. There are a number of questions on there. You should select 50 points. In other words, there's a whole lot more than 50 points worth of questions, and people ask, well, why is that? And it goes back to that concept that you're not supposed to be an expert in everything. So you can pick the questions you want to answer based on your particular expertise. And to me, that all made perfect sense. I am not an expert in everything. And when I took the CFSE exam, I picked the questions where I felt very confident that I knew the answer. Again, you must have 80% total over both sections to pass. There are a large number of resources available. There is a study guide. The Excellencia product group publishes a study guide primarily for the process industries exam based on 61511. There are preparation classes provided by a number of people, including Exida Consulting, ISA, and others. There are reference books available from both ISA and from Exida. I do recommend you read these books. And I'll give you a little hint. The exercises at the end of every chapter in many of the exida books are very similar to the CFSE exam questions. Although I might deny I said that. Who writes, creates, oh, got another question here. Who writes, creates, and updates the exams? I'll tell you in just a minute because I think there's a slide coming. The exida the CFSE program was founded in 2000, as I told you before, and it was a collaboration between two certification bodies, exida and TÜV-SÜD. I remember working with a fellow named Stefan Aschenbrenner, who worked for TÜV-SÜD at that time. And at first they couldn't figure out what this program was about. Nobody was asking them for such a program, but they finally agreed to go in with exida. Some of the the first batch of certificates were actually issued by TÜV-SÜD. But they dropped out of the program in 2002 because it just wasn't profitable enough. And the nonprofit CFSE Governance Board was established. The CFSE Governance Board has a number of committees. People on the various committees write the questions. The questions are then reviewed by other people on the CFSE Governing Board committee. There's a committee for each exam type. There's one committee for the developer exams, another committee for the process industry exams, another committee for the machine exams, and a new committee starting for automotive, which we don't even have listed yet. The questions are collated and sent out to other people in small quantities, no more than 5 questions per person, so that really no one gets to see the entire exam database other than the administrator. TÜV Rheinland launched a functional safety program in 2004, and ISA launched their ISA 84 expert program in 2008. TÜV-SÜD then came along later, and also in 2008, and started their own version of the CFSP program, but I haven't really heard of that continuing. So I hope that answers your question. If it didn't, please ask again. Members of the CFSE Advisory Board write and review all the questions, establish the procedures, the time limits, the grading procedures, exida certification, administers the program, collects applications, creates exams, is responsible for sending out the exams to the qualified graders list, and they're all double-blind exams. Those who grade the exams cannot be involved in any training because that's not allowed per ISO 17024. Because there's a natural bias and a partiality, the people who do the training would love to see everyone pass because they want their customers to be happy. The people who grade the CFSE exam have no idea whose exam it is. They have no idea who did the training. All they know is what the results of the exam are, and they judge it based on the correct answers that have been established by the governing board. There is a list of competent graders. The CFSE administrator, which is part of exida certification, arranges for grading. Different programs on the market can most certainly be compared. The CFSE program was started in 2000 It was established by a nonprofit organization. There are multiple levels. Training courses are recommended but not required. It's absolutely a very different ballgame. In fact, anyone who requires a training course would never pass ISO 17024. Training providers have to be independent, and anyone who doesn't operate the program with an independent training course would never pass. But I know for a fact that both the exida program, the trainers are absolutely not involved in the grading. In ISA, the trainers are, to my knowledge, not involved in the training. But in the TÜV Rheinland program, the training courses are written by local partners, typically engineers. This retired guy who gives the course for fun. The person who writes the course writes the exam. The person who writes the course and wrote the exam grades the exam. This is in total violation of 17025, and this program would just not pass reasonable impartiality criteria. In both the CFSE and the ISA, credentials are submitted before the exam. The exam is identical in all regions, and exam questions are developed by independent groups created by the CFSE board and a committee of the ISA. So I do have a lot of respect for the ISA program, and I think it's an excellent way to get started. And I think a lot of that training is very useful in preparing for the CFSP program. I see another question up here. Thanks. Is exida part of the governance board? Yes. Yes. The independence must be between those who develop and train. In other words, if I am an exam grader, which I am for some of the exams, I am absolutely not allowed to participate in the development of any course materials for that exam. I am absolutely not allowed to perform training for that exam. And those are the minimum requirements. Those are the requirements for impartiality. And to me, to a certain extent, they make sense. I should not be writing course materials specifically oriented toward passing an exam. I should not be writing exam questions specifically oriented toward training given, because that does not really test general knowledge. It's a well-defined, long-standing principle, and it's thoroughly documented in ISO 17024. Thanks for asking. But that's the fundamental difference between a certification program and a certificate program. In a certification program for personnel, ISO 17024 is required. An applicant must pass an exam based on tests, based on broad industry knowledge. The tests have to be totally independent of training courses or course providers, with no individuals sharing both roles. The course must be shown statistically to measure an individual's knowledge in use. A certificate program, on the other hand, you may absolutely attend a course, and the course provider may write an exam and ask you to take it, and confers a document to you at the end of the course. Now, according to ANSI 1100, in many parts of the world, Holders of training certificates may not use letters or acronyms behind their name and cannot use the word certified in describing their credentials. Got another question. Do the training classes significantly help people pass certification exams? And do you have any metrics for this? The bottom line is that the CFSE program and exida certification keeps very detailed questions on how many times each question is answered correctly versus incorrectly. We have very detailed, specific statistics that are automatically and manually tabulated on the exam to show to auditors that the exam measures broad industry knowledge. But quite frankly, we've never really done, we don't have knowledge. The people who grade the exams don't even know what training courses have been given to individuals. So we don't have any statistics to correlate training programs to success. And you're really not allowed to correlate. Although, now that you asked the question, I do think it would be quite interesting, but we certainly don't want to violate any of the impartiality rules of the personnel certification programs. And we're not required to ask what training was held. I'll have to look it up. Maybe we're allowed to ask. I have to check that. But we have no statistics. I will tell you that I personally have always found I learn the best on my own. And I'm not trying to put down training programs, but as I said once before, the main reason I go to training is to force myself to speed up the pace. Yeah, I paid the university big bucks to force me to study at a faster pace. Think about it that way. But in my opinion, I learned because of my work. You can argue about the individual performance levels and the value of courses all you want. I have another question for you. Now that you've seen this, I'm interested in knowing how many people are interested in the different programs. CFSE, CFSP, the TUV FSEng, which I classify as a certificate program, and the ISA 84 Expert Certificate Program. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Most everyone has voted. I assume those who didn't vote, yeah, they probably got it on no vote. Very good. Well, the majority, or the highest number here is CFSE. The second highest number is CFSP. There is one person who's interested in TUV FSEng, and one person who is planning to get the ISA 84. All right, that's very helpful. Thank you. Now, does anybody else have any questions? All right, there's some more. Go right ahead. Questions, comments. Does CFSE Governing Board notice us to review CFSE Governing Board notice us to review the CFSE certificate? I'm missing it here. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. The CFSE Governing Board does establish the general requirements. The CFSE Governing Board approves all procedures. In other words, how long do you get for the exam? The Governing Board and its various committees write the questions, review the questions. The CFSE Governing Board itself and members of the committee may or may not be a qualified grader In fact, some of the qualified graders are indeed members of the committee, but they have to be people who are not involved in any training preparation or training delivery. Each person who is qualified to grade has already passed an exam and has met additional criteria, and each person is rated on the specific exams they are qualified to grade. In other words, I am qualified to grade some of the process industry exams and the machine industry exams, but I am not qualified to grade some of the 61508 exams because I have participated within the last 2 years, that's the criteria, in 61508 training. Okay. Another one. Does exida notify you when you need to renew your certification? And the answer was, I discovered last year that notifications were not being done. And we are rapidly establishing a program to notify people 3 months in advance. But I'm not certain that's completely up and running yet. Obviously, it needs to be done. It's clearly planned. Can fresh graduate students take the certification exam right away? Fresh graduate students can take the CFSP exam. Yes, because that the education or actual work experience counts equally. For CFSP, that is allowed. Fresh graduates could not meet the entrance criteria for the CFSE exam. Another question, does exida encourage fresh graduates to take up such an exam? I think it could be valuable. The only issue I might have is that I'm just not sure. In fact, I'll word it differently. I haven't really seen any university programs that deal with functional safety. The one that looks most promising is Texas A&M. They have some really nice stuff, but I'm not sure if it's oriented toward passing or to giving you the knowledge you need to pass this exam. Thanks. Good question. Another one came in. I have a TUV FS-Eng. Do you think that training is sufficient to pass CFSP? Well, I have heard from a number of people. First of all, I don't know. We have no statistics. We don't keep records of who identifies themselves as a TUV FS-Eng. But I have heard from several who do have this, and they have told me that in some cases they have failed the CFSP exam, and in some cases they have passed. I have no statistics or no statistically significant number of reports. But I do know that it implies to me that the TUV FS-Eng program may not provide all the information you need to pass CFSP. Now, why is that? Among other things, the exam and the course varies from site to site. It is not consistent worldwide. Maybe that's the variable. I saw a comment on a safety group recently where an instructor was bragging about a 100% pass rate. And I wrote a blog about that if you want to look it up on the exida website. To me, that is something that should never be bragged about. If you write an exam that's easy enough to guarantee that everybody passes, Does that really judge competency? I say not. Another comment. I'm aware Texas A&M has a good program. Chapter 10 on Seaboard's book discusses functional safety briefly, but students, especially from developing countries, need to get a sense of safety culture. And CFSE certification could be important. Yeah, I agree. I'll interpret the comment a little differently, that getting a CFSP shortly after graduation keeps people thinking about functional safety and helps them more rapidly develop a good attitude toward functional safety, which is what we call safety culture. I wouldn't want to discourage them if they fail in the first attempt, but I do see lots of pluses. The only thing I worry about is that they may not have had enough training to pass. And it's nice when people pass, and it's a bit sad when people don't pass for personal reasons. But in fact, it's very important that the exams and the programs accurately reflect competency. If you have any more, if you like any more information, please check the CFSE.org website or the exida.com website. You can see schedules of upcoming exams. Anybody who's interested in having an exam in a particular area, you should contact the CFSE administrator at info@cfse.org, and exams can be arranged in special areas on request. That's been especially valuable for people who don't really have the means to travel. Another question came in. We're just about out of time. Where will we be able to find a copy of this presentation? You will get an email from Exida telling you about, with a copy of the slides and a link to the recorded session for those of you who want to hear this over and over again. Yeah, sure. Okay. What's the approximate cost? Good question. I should have looked that up. It's hundreds of dollars. It's not dirt cheap, but the program needs to pay for itself. If you want to know the costs, I would not hesitate to go to the CFSE.org website, where all of the costs are listed. I see we're out of time. I just want to thank everyone for attending today. Exida has web seminars on functional safety, cybersecurity, and process availability most every Wednesday. Please don't hesitate to give us comments. We appreciate the attendance. Thank you and goodbye.